The race for Binani cement is getting more and more complex. After lenders put their weight behind the highest offer made by Dalmia Cements, we have a googly from UltraTech which has sealed a deal with the erstwhile promoters of Binani to buy out the company for almost 7,300 crore rupees. To understand the rationale behind it and what it means for the IBC process, I am joined by Mr. K.K. Maheshwari, the Managing Director and CEO of UltraTech Cement. Mr. Maheshwari, welcome to ET Now. My first question, it's a googly of sorts for everybody. It came as a bit of a surprise. So are you in a way testing the IBC law?
You know, the IBC law has been recently enacted and everyone is sort of trying to grapple and get their hands around it in terms of how it can best be implemented. We have full respect for the IBC law and have been actually insisting that the provisions of it be followed by all the players. Absolutely. And it be respected fully. If you will really examine the law, then it says, one, the principle of value maximization.
That's the central theme,
Secondly, it also very importantly talks about balancing the interest of all stakeholders. And I think that's the important two principles which are there. Now, under the IBC law, there's also a provision for full transparency, and there are provisions to the effect that every resolution applicant also is entitled to participate in the meetings, though he cannot vote in the meetings. When his plan is considered, he can participate when his plan is considered. And these are precisely the elements where there are some ambiguities. You know, people have been talking about bids under IBC process. When you talk about a bidding process, essentially it means that all the technical parameters should be frozen. That's not the case under the IBC code. Every resolution applicant is asked to propose his or her own resolution plan, and that could vary in terms of how they're treating secured creditors, unsecured financial creditors, trade creditors, statutory creditors, how will they revive the units, how will they deal with employees, etc. And that's where the RPs have come up with some sort of a scoring mechanism in consultation with COC.
Which is the quantitative as well as qualitative.
And that's where the entire genesis is coming, that we believe that everyone ought to get a fair chance to understand what is being done. So if all technical parameters were defined, then you are absolutely right that am I bidding X and are you bidding X plus 1? But when there are a host of parameters to be considered, we believe that there is a need for fairness and equity. Now, I must thank the media, you know. In fact, due to a total opaqueness and non-sharing of information by RP and others, despite multiple requests by you, our friends in media have done a wonderful job in terms of discovering everything in terms of the contours of the deal and putting it into the public platforms. And what has been most upsetting for us is that all media reports indicate that Dalmia bid might have been higher by about rupees 100 crores or thereabouts, but also talked about, which is unfortunately getting lost in the din of the noise around the whole issue, is the fact that they had treated various unsecured financial creditors differentially. Now, besides media reports, I also understand that some of the banks have moved NCLT because of such a discriminatory treatment. So, I do not have access to the inside information, but media reports say that, and an action in NCLT says that. Let me just please complete. Now, what happens is that that's one particular issue. Then again, we understand, because a lot of trade creditors have been making noise in terms of the fact that a deal which has been approved provides significant haircuts, whereas our proposal, which I know for sure, I don't know the alternative proposal, provided for 100% payment
for all categories
to trade creditors, all the smaller trade creditors, and covering almost 98% of the trade creditors would have
that would involve 500 crore rupees.
Now, you know, again, the major issue is that while we do not know the details, all indications are that a bogey was raised with respect to possible CCI approvals becoming difficult for us, and therefore we were scored down. And it was on this count alone that we were not treated as H1 bidder. And therefore we've been requesting for transparency from RP. We also approached NCLT for helping us out decipher this myth and mystery which has been unnecessarily created. Now, is CCI a real issue or an imaginary issue which has been conjured up? Needs to be understood a little bit detailed. We provided to the RP advice and opinions of expert legal opinions. One sec, just let me just explain to you, because it has an important bearing on the question that you're leading up to. We have given them all the details and arranged their meetings with experts in the competition law who believe that this deal would pass muster under the competition law. Also the fact that despite certain orders which were passed against the company 5-6 years back, which have been stayed under further legal proceedings, we have received 3 CCI approvals for major expansion. So would have it impacted our ability to consummate this deal? No one is talking about it. Yeah. So what has happened is that you treat somebody, and again, now you may say, how do I know? Absolutely, I have no knowledge. And that's our main complaint. We find from newspaper reports that bankers who are participating in the deal going to the press and saying, yes, this was the reason why UltraTech lost out on the deal. Is it fair treatment? Yeah. And therefore we have gone to NCLT demanding fair and equitable treatment.
My question is about that. I mean, I have had opportunities to interact with officials from UltraTech in the last few days, and what I understand is your point that the process has not been fair to UltraTech. I mean, given the one-line terse message that you got saying that you don't make the cut. My point is, had the process been robust, I mean, were you rather forced to cut a deal with Binani because the process hasn't been fair to you?
No, I think that's misreading of the situation. You have to understand and appreciate the whole thing in its total perspective. If we tend to pick up things in parts, we are unlikely to get the right answer. So please understand, what happens is when you treat somebody with this opaqueness, and we have not gone to NCLT, we even now genuinely believe that on a fair and equitable scoring, but for that, some sort of an imaginary issue around CCI, we would have been H1. And in that same spirit, we approached and gave our revised offer to them, saying that we believe we are H1. We believe that we have given a fair and equitable proposal. Their term sheet, or the process sheet which they had put out, had actually said that they will call the H1 for discussion. So we even then unilaterally said, even though you are not calling us, we believe you are H1, we are giving you a revised proposal. We gave it to the RP and COC. We didn't hear anything from them. So we then approached NCLT also and gave them our revised proposal. So that's where it stands. We are before NCLT seeking justice. Now, in a separate proceeding, which is in the public domain, Binani had been pleading that their value is getting destroyed and the higher value proposals are not necessarily being considered. And they have approached us separately that, the same proposal which is in public domain now, which we had put out to the COC, and which when we went to NCLT now is in public domain, that whether on those basis they believe that they can take the company out of IBC proceedings and then sell the company to us. So mind you, we are still respectful of NCLT, have your full respect for law. So our acceptance of their proposal is premised on the fact that they would be able to take the company out of IBC proceedings, and also we have requested them in writing while accepting their proposal that this fact of their talking to us ought to be disclosed to NCLT in the spirit of full transparency. So I think we have always acted with total fairness, equity, and also with a spirit of full transparency.
Mr. Maheshwari, please help us understand. I mean, from the reading of the IBC, it gives out the impression that once the process is set in motion, the promoters are no longer owning the shares of the company. In a situation like this, the Binani promoters, are they authorized to sell the shares? I mean, I'm just trying to understand.
I'm not a lawyer. I must caveat everything I say with that, because the legal eagles may have some different views. But I think there is a bit of a misreading of the situation there. And let's leave out the Binani case for a moment, and let's take the case of an individual who mortgages his house and is unable to pay, and therefore his house is under an auction. So the auction house or the bank is conducting the auction proceedings. Does he cease to be the owner, or he continues to be the owner though the property is mortgaged with the bank? I believe that he continues to be the owner though the property is mortgaged. So it's the
Does
same
he have the
situation.
right to sell? That is the question.
So there are two things. He has no right to sell, but he also has a right to redeem his mortgage.
So in this case, the money comes in, he redeems his mortgage, that should be fine.
I believe that that is what is the pleading which Binani Industries has done with the NCLT, that they believe that on the basis of the proposal which is in public domain because of our having filed it with COC as well as with NCLT, that would enable them to discharge all their liabilities and they kick the company out of IBC proceedings. So I think there's the ownership doesn't cease. Owner still remains, he's still the person who has mortgaged a property or pledged his share, still remains the owner. He can sell it and pass on a clean title only after redeeming the pledge or the mortgage. So I think this whole aspect, and again let me tell you that we have been reading all sorts of news reports which make us wonder whether people are really appreciating what exactly is happening under the law. The Binani Cement Board is suspended, and we have not struck a deal with Binani Cement Board. Binani Industries Limited the promoters have approached us, and there again we have made it very clear to them that while we would give them the amount which has been agreed, we would be proceeding with the deal only if the company is out of IBC proceedings. We have been legally advised, and I'm sure Binani Industries have taken legal advice on their own, that possibility exists because a person's fundamental right to his property cannot be taken away just because of the fact that...
Theoretically speaking, if I accept that the Binani offer gets the okay from the NCLT, doesn't it raise questions about the sanctity of IBC?
It doesn't. What is the purpose of IBC? Is it that once a person has run into a problem that he should be debarred from somehow salvaging it, and necessarily the job of that salvation ought to be handed over to someone else? I don't think so. The purpose is maximization of value. Clearly, I think there is no diminution in value of the asset whether NCLT gives it to us or NCLT gives it to somebody else, or Binani Industries is able to redeem the shares and pay off all the creditors. The value maximization principle, it gets kicked in.
In fact, many have gone to the extent of saying that whether NCLT has the powers to stall a process when the proceedings have been set in motion.
So again, one would have to go by legal precedents and legal advice. There are no precedences, unfortunately, in this case. But clearly I tell you that what we understand, that there are provisions under the Act, Section 60, subsection 5 talks about a wide-ranging powers which NCLT enjoys in terms of taking cognizance of any applications which are filed by any of the impacted parties in taking a decision. Incidentally, let me tell you, nobody is talking about the opaqueness of the procedure. Just this morning there was a newspaper report that Delhi NCLT has passed an order in the case of Electrosteel directing the RP to share with others as to why their bids were not considered. Question arises, why this entire opacity? Why this entire quietness? When bankers are talking to the press, we do not know whether it's true or not, but that's what we read in the press, that the only and only reason why we were knocked out from the H1 pedestal was because of the CCI. And let me tell you, We have tried to do number of simulations to see that if the gap is 100 crores or 200
wish
crores.
You had your bid was 500 crore more maybe.
I'm not saying that.
Huh.
I'm saying we are very happy with whatever we had bid, and again, since the process had said that they'll call us for further negotiations, we had to keep certain
Is
amount.
there room for engaging with the second highest bidder
Let me
under
tell you.
IBC?
So there are two things. One thing very clearly. See, one thing is that I'm challenging that we have not been sure that. Now, what about the electro steel case? Please read that today. It's there in today's newspaper. That every resolution applicant is entitled to be told. We were not told anything. Secondly, just on a hypothetical imaginary assumption that we are going to be denied that approval, we are knocked off. Now, I raise a fundamental question. If that were so, why was it not put down in the original term sheet itself? And if you were to follow that, every strategic player of a reasonable size who would have the ability to turn around the assets would require CCI approval. So they would all be shunted out of the process. Yeah. Is that the intention? So I think there is much more than meets the eye in this case. If transparently things would have been shared, and I can tell you, you are in business, we are in business, everyone in business, we do simulations. By any stretch of imagination, on 100 or 200 crore rupees difference, and if you do the simulation, there is no way that UltraTech would have scored lower. And that's why, and that gets substantiated by all the press reports. As late as yesterday, there were press reports saying that the bankers who are party to the whole process have said that the only reason UltraTech wasn't considered was due to some CCI approval issues. Now that's what is making
I believe even Dalmia had a CCI issue. I mean, they had not disclosed certain things that was there in
the investigations get done. They are at different stages. Now, we do not wish to comment about others, but certainly I can tell you that in our case, despite those proceedings where we again believe that we were not done anything wrong, we have got 3 approvals from CCI, one as back as just last year when we acquired JP assets.
Yeah.
Now to ignore all of this, is it fair? I think no one is asking
That's
the
a
question
very solid point
around
actually.
Fairness and equity. Secondly, all newspaper reports suggest that people have gone round on the basis of vote shopping. In the sense that, okay, unsecured financial creditors, you have voting power, I'll give you more, you don't have voting power, I'll give you less, and that's why you are now finding.
Fight, yeah.
Now, no. So that is where again, the basic principle of fairness and equity, which is enshrined, forget about the act, just read the preamble. It talks about that. So are we willing to throw away all the principles? And again, our point is that when people talk about the highest bid amount, the scoring criterion is totally being ignored. The principle of fairness and equity is totally being ignored. I throw another challenge at you, Mr. Abhinav. If such deals were to get passed where just because people who have a vote around the table vote for themselves and leave trade creditors and even statutory creditors, government money,
that will again go to NCLT in that
case. To be applied huge haircut, will it enhance the reputation of IBC process, or a more fair and equitable treatment of all creditors would enhance the acceptance of IBC? So I think these are fundamental questions which are not even getting engaged upon in the debate, and everyone is just saying. So I think it's more a question around our being treated fairly, which has been the key to all our arguments so far. And had we been very clearly told that this is it, and if this, in spite of CCI marks and all of that, they would have treated us fairly on that. If you would have lost out, I'm telling you that we would not have gone to NCLT. But the fact is that when you're treated as unfairly,
we have seen in the case of Sesa Goa actually, where you took the verdict and quietly moved on.
So what choice do they leave you with? So we are following all the legal course which is available to us. As far as you talk about Binani's thing, it's very simple. Today's date, they read newspapers as much as you read and I read, and when they find that the stakeholders, and it talks about all the stakeholders, to say that shareholders are, I mean, you read newspapers reports saying that shareholders have no stake. I mean, it talks about all stakeholders. Does the code say that shareholders cease to be a stakeholder just because the company has gone into IBC? It doesn't. Now, when they approach you and say that, and mind you, we have given them the same proposal which we have put to NCLT. And if based on that, if they believe they can take that company out of IBC proceedings, in fact, everyone should feel happy. I don't think that necessarily, we almost seem to be thinking that putting companies through IBC process is a very virtuous thing. But if a company can come out of that, and in fact, that's the intent of all bankruptcy law, not to declare companies bankrupt, but to make sure how they come out of bankruptcy. I think this is, if you talk about Chapter 11 proceedings in US, they talk about how the companies will be supported to come out of insolvency. Now here, we are trying to say that if a company comes out of insolvency, it's very bad. I mean, it's.
But you tell me something. Another very important point is the fact that RP has red flagged certain fraudulent transactions by the Binani promoters amounting to almost 2,400 crore rupees. You've cut a deal with them. Does it raise some questions about the transaction? I mean, just given the kind of track record that the promoters Binani has had in the recent times.
So, this news has come as much as a surprise to us as it has come to all of you. Please tell us if RP was aware of this. Have they shared it with anyone, not with us at any instance?
This is a part of the audit findings by Haribhakti and Company.
So, I really cannot comment upon a matter which we were not aware of, which RP has never shared with us, the fact, so it's clearly something I do not think I'm in a position to comment upon. But, whenever a company, whichever company you acquire, the past deeds are of the past promoters, you don't inherit that.
And very does cloud the credibility of the transactions?
It does. See, there are two different ways of looking at it. What they have done, we are absolutely not privy to any information. We don't have any copy of the report. I'm sure that Binani Industries Limited or Binani Cement board would have their own explanation. I do not know if explanations have been sought from them, so that's a matter.
You've never asked them as to what is.
You see, that's not a matter on which I would like to comment, because we are not a party to that. Now, when you talk about our deal with them, it's totally transparent. Even before they have approached us, we have given the same proposal to NCLT. So our proposal is in no way linked with this new discovery which RP has suddenly made. So we are not in a position to comment about that. Now let me tell you another thing, that since we have bought a lot of companies which have at some point of time been in distress, that there are certain challenges, and that's why they have gone into distress. And that's where they need an absolutely top-notch management with tremendous expertise in turning around companies.
You would continue to explore both options, one under IBC and one outside. It was more like peddling both boards together.
I think you're mistaken. There are two totally different sets of things. So we are not sitting on two boards. We had participated in the bidding process. As I explained to you again, that the whole process, if it would not have been shrouded in that secrecy, and the due process would have been followed in terms of inviting the people when their proposals are discussed, being told what is happening, rather than newspapers report citing that, because of an opaqueness around CCI proposal, you've been knocked out. We are knocking at the doors of NCLT seeking justice.
In fact, most cases.
Now, you please understand. Yeah. The Binani is on a separate, that's a totally separate thing which Binanis are doing. UltraTech has got nothing to do with it. Trying to take their company out of that process, because once they find that this is the sort of value which is there in their company, based on which they are in a position to take the company out of insolvency proceedings, then they are justified in doing it, and only if they succeed will our transaction go ahead. So I don't think it's a question of riding in two boats. I think it's a totally separate thing, because they have approached us and we have given them the same proposal. If I would have given them a penny more, you could have said that, are you trying to play around with the process? That's not the case. I think here there are two different cases. We are trying to seek justice, and maybe Binani Industries Limited in their own way is also trying to seek justice. That if there is a higher value available, why should that particular company be sold off for less? And again, the question is being raised there that shareholders need not be concerned with that. But please understand that the Act premises on taking care of all the stakeholders, whether it's employees, whether it's your suppliers, whether it is the government statutory bodies. So I think this whole aspect will need to be seen in a holistic way, and I'm sure that as the law evolves, people will see that we have in a constructive way tried to make it more robust rather than in any way weaken it.
In fact, one last question. I mean, when it comes to the high profile cases under IBC, and litigation seems to be the way forward, do you by any chance expect maybe fresh bids happening for Binani as well? Because the way things are heading, we seem to be going in that direction.
You know, in life there are two things. You never say never, and you have to deal with life as it comes. So you are asking me questions which are all in realms of supposition and hypothesis, so we'll have to deal with them as it evolves. I think all of us, whenever we start some a new journey in life or in legislation or in the life of a country, we grapple with new situations.
And this is a new law that everybody is trying to test and understand.
Absolutely. So I think it's going to be, so let's see, we have always been pleading for fairness and equity. And I think that's the basic thing which, having been denied, has really pained us. Why should we be told from newspaper reports, quoting bankers who are party to the deal, being told that, you know, CCI approvals are unlikely to come and therefore the bid is being rejected, when I have got approval for 21 million tons capacity acquisition last year of JP. So I think this is all, cement is such a fragmented industry. You know, there are over 40 players. There are large players like Lafarge, Holcim and other Indian players having significant capacities and market share, and they're all expanding. So I think the idea of saying that, you know, one entity is going to have undue influence in the marketplace due to a particular acquisition is absolutely preposterous.
I'm sure the new law will prove itself, and maybe the best guy will be the winner. On that note, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for speaking to me.